Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast. Hello, I'm Marc Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have Richard Wyn-Griffith, the MD of Softcat in the virtual house. How are we doing?
Very well, thank you, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all good. Really, really good. Thanks very much for coming on, Richard. One of the things I want to start off with is because you've got a career that every single graduate in the channel would love to emulate. You know, most people start off their career in the grad sales, and they certainly don't think they could probably get to the MD level. So I really want to sort of kick off there, really. What made you sort of start off in grad sales and your rise to the top, really? So, you know, how did you get the role at Softcat? Let's kick off with that.
How did I start Softcat? I mean, I was a graduate at that time, 2002, November 2002 is when I started. So over 18 years ago. And, you know, at that point, we were pretty much only taking graduates on, or people that had, you know, second jobbers. So people that had done some sort of sales stuff beforehand in a different industry, but mainly graduates at that point. So I was one of the intakes, and I did a chemistry degree, so it wasn't like I did a business and IT degree, which you see a lot of people doing. I did a chemistry degree. I came out of university in the summer previous. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted a job. I lived in Leeds, or just outside Leeds, and lived there for 20 years. And most of my mates from uni were coming down south, where we're getting jobs in London, you know, jobs in the city, or, you know, graduate type jobs. I went to Durham Uni, so it was, I think it still is, a relatively good university. So there's some of my friends had some pretty good jobs, and I wanted to be close to them. That was the main thing, you know. There was a sort of draw that, you know, you can earn more money if you work in the south, and as a graduate, that was quite attractive to me. And I applied for loads of jobs coming out of university. Like everybody does, the sort of milk round process, just sending loads of cover letters and CVs off with applications to loads of different companies in, you know, these prospects lists that you get out of university, which had these lists and reams of companies in. And I got kind of nowhere, really. Being perfectly honest, I didn't have a brilliant degree. I got a 2-2. It was all right. You know, it's an all right degree and an all right university in a subject that it's all right. It's not particularly interesting. It's definitely not vocational, is it? It's not like an accountancy degree. It's not something you can go and hang your hat on. I didn't want to be a chemist or a pharmacist or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, one of the jobs I applied for was Softcat. They were in the prospects thing, and I tell this story internally quite a lot. But the reason I applied for the Softcat job was because I really wanted to work for Microsoft. At the time, they were top of all of those, top graduate recruiter, top job for graduates type company. You know, you used to publish in the Sunday Times and say how much, you know, you earned as a graduate in year one and year two, and what perks and everything there was. And they sounded like the most fantastic company to work for. So at the time, Softcat were advertising sales jobs as Microsoft business executives. I mean, really, that's what we were selling back in those days. Microsoft licensing, it was our pedigree. So I thought, well, Microsoft business executive, I want to work for Microsoft, apply for this job, get that, do that for a couple of years, and I'll be a shoo-in at Microsoft. And it wasn't, it didn't take very long, a couple of weeks until I realized, and I sort of sat there and was like, I don't think I do want to work for Microsoft anymore. I think I'm quite happy here. I really enjoy it. So that's how it came about.
What was the process? How was it different from when you joined to the process now? Must be completely different.
It's not. It really isn't. No, it's not. It's pretty straightforward and simple. Like it's. I mean, today we have a lot better visibility as a company, obviously, and we have a lot better relationships at campus level with universities. And you know, back in those days, you had one office in High Wycombe. Today we've got 9 across the UK and Ireland, so we're better regionally located, and so we're a little bit better known to the universities and therefore a bit closer to the graduates. But it's still the same process. It was an assessment day. I came in, I learned about the company, I sat down and had loads of people presenting to us about different parts of the business. I went away and was asked, you know, take away what you've seen and tell us if you think it's something that you want to do. You know, that basically you come back and tell us whether you want to apply for the job. Came back and wanted to apply for the job, did an interview, came back down for that. back down to High Wycombe, and then I got offered the job, and that was it, straight in. And then we did the intake training. And to be honest with you, the intake training today isn't drastic. I mean, today it is, obviously it's virtual, but it's not drastically different, really. It's a lot of education around a lot of different subjects. I suppose in my day it was probably a bit simpler because there was a lot less subjects. We didn't have as wide a portfolio as we do today in terms of what we sell. But we were also a little bit more unknown than perhaps we were before. So there was a lot about learning the different techniques about getting through the door and getting people to understand who you are and what Softcat did. Whereas I think today, perhaps people have heard of us a little bit more, certainly in the industry. So it might be a bit of an easier entry point. But yeah, the opportunity was there, and I just took it.
And has the culture changed drastically over the time you've taken in the organisation? Because there's a lot of people out there that want to emulate Softcat's culture. That's it's very well known now. Everyone outside of Softcat, and I'm sure inside as well, but everyone outside of Softcat thinks you've got a great culture. So was the culture drastically different from when you started?
I think it's not that different, Mark, if I'm honest with you. I mean, we're obviously a completely different sized organisation. So I think I joined with about 75 employees out of one office. Today, close to 1,700 employees out of, like I said, 9. And it's a completely different beast in terms of managing the culture across those different regional offices and the different size of offices. But I think the culture essentially is still the same. The values are certainly the same. So the values that were there on the day I joined are the same values that we have today. So it's difficult because I've not moved out of it to be able to reflect from the outside in. But certainly the people I speak to from outside the organisation have a pretty good understanding of our culture, and it's how I would describe it. And it's not that different in 2021 as it was in 2002, realistically.
Okay. How important is it for you to sort of keep the Softcat culture as dynamic as it is? How, especially now, the last 12 months, I don't know, as MD, I don't know how you've been able to keep the culture when it's the vibrant offices you've got, but how important is it for you to sort of keep that Softcat culture going even in lockdown?
Yeah, I mean, look, put the pandemic to one side just for a minute, and in terms of answering that, and the culture it's everything. It's absolutely imperative to the business. We had this principle that if our employees want to come to work, they're energized by the workplace, they're energized by the company and by the culture that's in there, they're going to give fantastic customer service. And if customers have fantastic customer service, they'll keep coming back, they'll keep being delighted by us, and in turn they'll spend more money and we'll grow, and everyone, it's this brilliant virtuous circle. It makes everybody a lot happier. And so therefore it's just so important from a cultural aspect to continue to evolve that and get it right, and talk about evolving it, because it is a slight evolution. It's not exactly the same as it was in 2002, but largely the core principles are the same. But as you say, it does evolve. Then take the pandemic into context, and the fact that the majority of our culture came from being office-based, from having everybody in that office, and we're a telephone sales-based organisation in the most part. Of course, we go and see customers and we spend time doing that face-to-face piece, which is so important to selling. But the majority of our staff will be in the office at any given time. Certainly in February last year, that was what was happening. And now everybody's remote. It's even more important for us to try and join and link up that culture and join and link up the workplace and evolve. And we've had to evolve so much in the last year in terms of how we engage staff, how we try and engage staff, how we keep communications up, how we keep our levels of fun up, both as an organisation at 1,700, but in their smaller teams of maybe 6 to 10, or however they do that in a location base as well, in different types of departments within the organisation, be them sales or be them non-sales. It's really, really important to try and keep that culture within each different team and each different department. So yeah, it's been that's probably been the hardest thing, without a shadow of a doubt, that, and taking into consideration people's well-being and how people are feeling in this sort of time, and the fact that everybody's different and everybody's got a different circumstance. That in itself has been probably the two biggest challenges that we faced over the last year.
Go back to your career a minute. So you started off in graduate sales. You obviously were pretty successful, good at selling. Then you went into management. Tell me about that jump of how you got into management and how you started getting recognised within the business.
So we generally have player managers for a long duration of sales and sales management. So I sold to customers right up until I think 2015. So 6 years ago was the last time I stopped selling. The progression as a salesperson in our business is, as you say, you find your own accounts, you keep them, you develop them, you do better and better with them. You build out the portfolio that you sell within those customers. You perhaps add a few more customers, and you continue to rise. And at the time, you also then take on a little bit more responsibility. You're part of a team, so you're taking a bit more responsibility for guiding and mentoring new people through. We have this sort of continuous recruitment process. So there's always salespeople starting probably every 2 to 3 months on that sort of regularity. So there's always you're not the new person for long. And then there's a newer person that comes in and might join your team, or in 6 to 12 months. And so there's a bit of mentoring that can happen because you're the most recent person through that. So you kind of get involved in it, whether you get rewarded for it or not. You just kind of get involved in the team culture, and everybody buys into this desire to make the team successful. So you spend quite a lot of time helping people out, and then you can make that a bit more official by becoming a team leader, a deputy team leader within that team. You start to step onto the management side of things, and I did that fairly early on, and to be honest with you, it was more luck than judgment at that point, because I joined a new team when we moved from High Wycombe to Marlow, which I think was 2004 or 2005. I can't remember. 2004, I think. I joined a new team with a chap who we'd expanded the sales team, so there was new teams being started all over the shop. So I joined his team as the deputy on that team and just took a bit more responsibility. And within 6 months, he'd handed his notice in, and he was off, and he'd gone off to do another job. So if essentially the team lead job for that team was up for grabs. And I went for it with a couple of other people and sort of competed with him on the recruitment process, and was lucky enough to be awarded that role at that time. But that was fairly quick to rise. But obviously, it wouldn't have happened had he not left. I'd have probably followed the more normal route, which would have been that deputy for a couple of years, and then stepped up and sort of built the team up and split it out, and so on and so forth. So I got into that team lead role quite quickly, but enjoyed it. And I think in my makeup, which may be different from people that are very sales driven, very purposefully want to do selling and want to really drive and earn their money through that commission base. I really enjoyed seeing other people's success and being invested in other people's success. So I was all right at selling. I was pretty good. I wasn't the best by a long way, but it did enough to pay the bills. But I really enjoyed seeing other people succeed. So I could already feel that idea of, like, I really like management. I actually really like being invested in other people's success and seeing that go through. So I accelerated from that point as we grew my team out. So I ended up with 2 or 3 teams managing other team leaders. And then this opportunity came up. In fact, before that, the opportunity came up for us to do our first regional expansion in Manchester. And I thought about it, and I just got together with my now wife at the time, and we talked about it. Shall we just up sticks? And we'd both come and relocated to the Buckinghamshire area for Softcat. And we thought, God, should we up sticks and go up north to Manchester and try and give that a shot? And we both decided, you know what, we just got together. We had lots of mutual friends, lots of friends down here. We just thought it wasn't the right time. But I said, well, the next time a new office comes up, I'm going to go for it. We should make an effort here. So that was about 2.5 years later. We opened our city office in Moorgate. And I went for that and was fortunate enough to be given that job. And that was my first sort of move into sort of management. Still player managing though, still selling, still looking after some good customers. At that point, really bringing my customer base down and focusing on a few, which, as we all know, that is the best actual way to sell. So you kind of really increase your performance at that point when you bring your account base down and focus on it. But it was also charged with recruiting best part of 40 people over the course of 2.5 years to build out that London office, and try and build a culture that was London's own culture, leaning on the fact that they were going to have a load of new people in the office, but also bringing the Softcat culture. That's, as you say, how do we build the culture out? That's how we did it. We opened lots of smaller regional offices, but we always put somebody from the original Softcat office or from an original Softcat office who understood the culture to take it to So you always end up with that little core of Softcat culture, but you build it around lots of new people that can build their own, sort of create their own culture for their own region. So we did that in London pretty successfully. Gosh, I'm traveling through the histories here. So then my wife got pregnant. So we got married. Then my wife got pregnant. And that was the point I went to Martin, who at that point was CEO, and said to him, I want to come back to Marlow. I was living in Maidenhead. It was a commute and a half. It was about 3 hours round commute. By the time I got up in the morning, got back at night, I was leaving at 6, getting back at 8. New child. I just thought, no, I just don't think it's going to cut it. That's not what I want to do. So I said to him, can I come back to Marlow and do something there? Because then I've got my nice short commute. And he was very good enough to say yes in the first place. And then he said, so what do you want to do? I was like, oh, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about that much. They said, what, do you want to come back and do the same as what you're doing now, but just go and build another sales team and another sales manager in Marlow and build out that sales team with Matt Jones at that time, who was doing it in Marlow. And I thought, no, something different, new challenge, need something else. Went back to him, nah, not that, something different. He said, well, you come up with something. You think about what it is you want to do. And that really got the sort of juices going. And at that point, I started to look around the business. And there was a few people that sort of came to me and said, oh, I've heard you want to come back to Marlow. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And I could have gone into public sector and done that in the South. But at that, I decided that wasn't the right thing for me. But I did notice that what was then our storage and virtualization team, I felt needed a bit of direction, needed a bit of steer. And I came back to Martin and I said, I quite fancy this. I really like this market. I had done a couple of deals in that space within my customer base. And I could see the way it was going, VMware and virtualization and all of that sort of stuff, and really felt that was a really good opportunity. And he said, yeah, you can come back and do that, but you'll also have to take this team and this team as well. We're going to bring our solutions business together, and you can do that. Okay, that sounds good. So yeah, I think at that point I got quite a bit more responsibility in terms of management. I was still selling, still had to sell, yeah. And it was about really it was about two things. One, it was staying close enough to customers to understand what the market was going on, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed today. I really enjoy it, staying close to customers and understanding what's going on in the marketplace, because I think you can step a little bit further back from it and you can become really detached from it, and you can read all sorts of press and news and Gartner, and you can listen to what the vendors are saying and what's going on in the marketplace, but until you speak to customers and understand what customers are doing, that all becomes like noise, because it's just what they want you to hear, it's what they want you to sell. And I think you've got to really understand what the customer wants and what's going on in the marketplace. So one part of it was that, and the other part of it was, hey, I just want, I still was a bit, this sort of move into management from a sales job. You'll always earn more in sales than you will in management. And that was a struggle and adjustment for me, again, young family and everything else. So that was the way that I could sort of bridge the gap, was continue to sell a little bit and step into management. And eventually I ended up going back to Martin Martin Colin at that point. Colin had joined us and saying, I can't sell anymore. I'm not doing it justice. These accounts and I think this job's a lot bigger than it currently is, and I think I need to give it more time. And that was when I moved. But like I say, 2015, I think that happened. So it's been a while since I've actually account managed a customer, but sales is still in there somewhere. Goes through the veins.
Absolutely. Now, the job came up as the MD, but it came up in probably the worst time in history for you, in this pandemic. I don't know anyone that's taken over as MD in sort of like July, August. So tell me how that come about. Was it just Colin saying, no, I don't want to do it anymore, or was it planned, or how did it come up? I'm probably throwing Colin under the bus and saying it has COVID, he dropped out.
Yeah, we did a runner as soon as COVID hit. No, it wasn't like that. And I'm sure he'll listen to this and be like, oh, tell the truth. So as far as I know, because obviously I wasn't party to every single discussion, but as far as I know, it was reasonably planned in Colin's mind. I don't think, making a decision like he's made in terms of taking that step back from a day-to-day business is a big decision to make, and he probably ummed and ahed on it for a while. But I think what he knew about it, I think he was aware that that was going to be something that was on the horizon. So, I mean, 8 years was probably the longest he'd give, bar his computer center time, as long as he'd given in a recent time. It was probably longer than he first envisaged he would give to it, but he had a great time, no doubt about that. He made that decision before the pandemic, before it was even a thing, and we were actually through the process of me accepting that job before the pandemic. So we did a bit of work on that one beforehand. You know, as a PLC, we're pretty structured in our succession planning, everything else. So I think there was a good steer as to the direction they wanted to go in, and obviously I was keen for progression and had also voiced that through the number of years as well as to what my next challenge was going to be. So it happened fairly straightforwardly, and then the pandemic hit. And it kind of hit in the midst of, and I know when obviously we announced it just after Boris had put everybody in that first lockdown in March. So from an external perspective, it looks like that, but from an internal perspective, we kind of knew what was going on before that hit. So, but Colin was still in role until the end of July, until the end of our financial year, and Colin and I spent a lot of time together, and still even after the end of that year, he mentored me for some time. I've worked for him for almost 6 years, so we knew each other pretty well, but we spent a lot of time together, and I spent a lot of time with Watty putting together the team and what we wanted the organisation to look like from August the 1st, obviously the start of our financial year. So yeah, taking it in the pandemic wasn't quite how it happened. It is what happened, but it's not how it happened. And to be honest with you, well, even if it had been in a pandemic, I wonder whether Colin would have made that decision in a pandemic. He probably wouldn't have. He probably would have just gone, actually, it needs to be that, the world needs to be a bit more stable, and rather than uncertain. And but it is what happened, and it's been fine. There's a lot of things that I haven't been able to do that I would really love to have done, like go and visit the offices and go and visit the staff and see the staff in offices. But at the same time, I've been able to see and meet and be involved in a lot more stuff than perhaps I would have been if it had been the old sort of traditional way of going out and just doing every meeting face to face. I am on video and virtual calls constantly, so I get to see a lot of people from across the business, albeit virtually, which isn't quite the same. But yeah, it's been a learning curve.
So Richard, as you've taken over the job, what was the sort of the 2 or 3 things that you wanted to do to put your stamp on it? You said there was one thing you couldn't do was go around and see the offices, but was there anything in your mind when you took the job and accepted the job you thought, right, these are, because you've been man and boy into the company, was there anything you really wanted to change? You thought, yeah, I actually really want to make sure I'm doing this, or was it a continuation of all the good work Colin had done anyway?
I think it's more the latter, Mark, to be honest with you. So we don't tend to go under radical change in our business because we don't need to radically change. We've been successful, as you say, for so many years, doing roughly the same thing, adding to, incrementing, broadening the team, augmenting it where we need to, adding new technologies, new portfolio, etc., etc. But it's always been do what we've clearly done and then add an increment to it. So it was very much the same as that. I think there was possibly a few things that I wanted to try and drive a little bit more than had been driven beforehand. One of those was probably the collaboration between the sales organization, which obviously I'd been a part of for the whole of my career, and the other departments in the business that supports the sales side of the business. So, I took over marketing. I'm going to get all my times wrong now because this last year just doesn't really register when you think about times, but probably 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I took over the marketing department and tried to bring marketing closer to sales, which is one of the tasks I undertook for Colin. And it was certainly something I was quite passionate about in terms of bringing our marketing side together with sales and drive more opportunity that way. And I'd also, prior to Colin leaving, I'd taken on some of the services business as well. So the operational side of our services and technical business, which I was in the process of. It had only been 6 to 12 months in that transition of, again, trying to bring that business slightly closer to our sales organization. So I wanted to continue that work, but I knew that needed a little bit more impetus. one of the things I really wanted to do was bring our sales organization together, which had kind of traditionally been run in 3 different silos. So we had our corporate sales, we had public sector sales, and we had our solution sales. Now, I was one of those pillars in solution sales previously, but my counterpart, Anne Cowan, in public sector, and at the time, Matt Jones on the corporate side, had kind of run those businesses separately and been very successful in running them separately and doing different initiatives. But clearly there was a lot of overlap. We were doing the same things perhaps 3 times rather than doing it once and then rolling it across other areas of the business. So there was really some efficiencies to be gained by building out a structure that enabled us to do things once and duplicate them and only select the best things and not, learn from other people's mistakes, as opposed to just going out and just trying to do all of these different things and end up with inconsistencies in terms of what an account manager in public sector or corporate or a sales specialist understands as to the direction of the business. So that was a really important thing to do as well. We did that straight away by bringing Ant in as the overall sales director. Solutions is still slightly separate from that, but they work very closely together, and that collaboration bit was really important, bringing solutions, bringing the technical and services part of the business, and our alliances and marketing part of the business. So you think about my direct reports are all in that space, and that's all how we've built the business for going forward in terms of our, for all intents and purposes, go to market.
Okay, so you obviously, you've got those 3 silos you've put together. Now, we talked earlier about culture. It's very well documented, very well known about your culture, office-based, graduates, fun environment, very vibrant. How have you managed to keep that going or even collaborate in the last sort of 12 months? And what challenges have you found with it?
The first challenge was putting everybody remote. Is it going to work? And how is that going to work? Because we'd never done it. Companies hadn't business continuity tested doing that for longer than a day or 2 days or an hour's outage. It works now, but will it work in 6 hours time? Is it going to continue to work in 24 hours time? And it did. It's a testament to our IT teams for making sure that we had the capability to do that and to make that move and make sure that the phones kept ringing and the phones could ring out as well, because obviously that's vitally important to us as a sales business, to be able to speak to our customers and transact with them. So that's the first thing that was like, crikey, rabbit in the headlights. Second thing was then, right, okay, hang on a second. How is everybody working? Firstly, we have got, as you say, a number of people, especially in sales, that have, apprentices. In fact, not especially in sales actually, because we hire quite a lot of apprentices in our non-sales roles as well. These guys are sort of 18, maybe 19 years old, still living at home. Where were they working? How were they working? What was their function? We had people sat on the ends of beds on laptops. I was like, okay, well, that's okay for a couple of days, maybe a week. And these guys are pretty young. But then as it started to turn into what was the reality, which was, hang on a second, this is going to be a couple of weeks, a couple of months. Where's it going to go to? So we need to make sure that everybody's got what they need to be functional. So could they do their job and could they be comfortable in doing so? And then how are we supporting them on the basis that, crikey, hang on a second, I'm now isolated. I'm isolated from my friends, and young people really need that social element. As a bit of an old codger for our business, I'm okay-ish on my own. Although we'll come back and touch on that later, because that's something I've learned about myself. But they need people. They need the people around them. They need their social. It's so important to them. It's part of the draw of our culture, is the fact that there is a social side. It's sort of work hard and it's play hard in that environment. It's there are people around you doing similar jobs, and you can chat, take your time talking to people, and you can build good friendships. Most of my good friendships that still survive today have been built in our business. So it's really, that's what it's about. So take that away from them. How are they going to feel about that? And I think as we went through the initial lockdown, that first time, March, that sort of came to a head in June, we just bluffed our way through that, really. We put a lot of effort into communicating. We put a lot of emphasis on our management team to make sure they were connecting people and they were doing that sort of virtual teams, that virtual social element. And there was a lot of effort that went into making sure that people were still contacted on a regular basis and felt part of an organisation, despite the fact that they were sat in isolation in their own homes. I think the sort of break over the summer and in the early autumn really helped, actually, because people got that opportunity to go out and be social again, sort of. And I think everyone sort of breathed that massive sigh of relief of, right, okay, this is what it's going to be like, without really seeing what was ahead of them coming in the winter. Absolutely. But as a business, I suppose we planned a little bit better for that second time, and we knew what worked, we knew what didn't work, we knew what we needed to do, we knew how we needed to focus on the working from home culture, and we were ready a bit more in the second lockdown in November, and then ready for this one as well in 2021. So, we've worked hard on it. We've got work groups, we've got focus groups, we've got people doing a lot of extracurricular work over the top to make sure that people feel part of something, that we run events, that we do company calls and all sorts of communications that we do regularly. We still send an email every week to the whole organisation, just updating them on how we're doing as a business from a COVID perspective, and what things that they need to look out for in terms of news or whatever's going on, just to keep them updated. And we've done that since March. Between Watty and I, or Colin previously, but between Watty and I, we send that email every week on an alternative basis, just to keep that connection with the organisation. And we keep doing, like I say, lots of all hands calls, lots of office calls, keep the communication flow as much as possible so people feel part of something. But we still have, I don't know, maybe a few more people that have started working for Softcat in the pandemic, have never been or very rarely been to an office. They might have started early, sort of around this time last year, and therefore got a chance to go in when we did open the offices briefly. But even then, there was a fraction of the population in those offices. They don't know what the culture's like. They don't know what it's like to be part of our organisation, working in an office environment, what we sold them, and what we talked to them about in terms of culture. But you know what? Our virtual onboarding has been brilliant, and I speak to quite a lot of those new starters on a fairly regular basis at the moment, and they all sort of, I love this company. I love which part. I feel so part of something. I feel really part of my team. It's a really great company. You can tell how much you look after the organisation, and you really care about the well-being. That's what's out there going, you haven't seen anything yet. You've seen a quarter of what we can do, and wait till your mind's going to be blown. Some of these people that I'm working from the London office. Where are you living? Out in Hertfordshire or Bedfordshire or something like that. I'm like, wait until you get into the city and it's an office and the city's in full flow. Then you're going to feel really energized. So I'm quite excited to see how people react on that basis. And I think whilst there are going to be people that are going to be a little bit apprehensive about going back into an office-based environment, I think the vast majority of our organisation are quite keen to get into the office, and certainly those 200 plus people that haven't experienced it, they'll be there knocking at the door when we get back to it.
Do you think there was lots of things going on during the last 12 months, virtual post-work, virtual quizzes, Joe Wicks this, yoga that, all that sort of stuff. It's really things that you've implemented during the last 12 months that will stay beyond sort of COVID and lockdown, that you'll carry on doing, as but you only implemented them in lockdown?
Yeah, there's probably a couple actually. I mean, we've done, there's two things I can think of just off the top of my head. I think fitness generally has become a thing, a little bit more of a thing. People are really looking out for themselves, looking after themselves, taking the time that they've got that they would have spent perhaps in a car. Part of a number of different challenges, fitness challenges. We did something for Mind at the back end of last year. We're currently in the middle of a challenge, which is a team-based challenge. It's an internal thing where we're trying to get around all of our offices in the UK and end up at Amsterdam, where we've opened an entity in Amsterdam. In fact, we did that as a company, and we achieved it in a stupidly quick time. So we're now on the way to Singapore, where we've got a single employee in Singapore. So we're about halfway to Singapore as it stands. And that's all about just tracking the miles and doing the miles, walking, cycling, running, whatever it is people do to stay fit. So I think people will still do that. And I think we'll do that as a collective organisation more as well. Trying to drive those collaborative type efforts and team efforts. That's certainly one thing. The second, which I personally really enjoy. We do this thing called coffee roulette, and there's a bit of an argument actually internally at the moment in the organisation as to who came up with the principle. A guy in London claims it, another guy in Manchester claims it. I've been trying to work out. I've said, can you send me your proof as to when you think you started it? So I know who started it, but I'm not gonna divulge that one. I quite like the battle that it's causing internally. But chat roulette, the coffee roulette, it's the same principle. They get on a Zoom, and you get all the people come in. There's a little bit of introduction, and then bang, you just get smashed out into breakouts, into randomized breakout groups, sort of 5-6 people, and you just talk about anything, about what's going on, how people in, I've joined as many of them as I can, and a number of the other leadership team members have done that as well. So you could get put in there with a leadership team. You could just get put in there with somebody from your office or whatever it is. You could get put in there with people you've no idea. And again, that's how I've met quite a lot of the new starters, in terms of just getting in there and just meeting them. And they enjoy the opportunity to talk to me and ask me anything. I love using it as an opportunity to ask them how they are, what's going on, how people are feeling, and I love it. I think it's brilliant as a tool for connecting different regions, different parts of the business together. Again, talking about collaboration, it's massive, and I really want to make sure we try and continue it going forward. I think it's one of those things that people will put less emphasis on when they get back into a more physical environment. But at the same time, I still think it's important for us to do it, because how else does a salesperson in London connect with a salesperson or a procurement person in Manchester? It's very rare that's going to happen unless you jump on these calls. And I think people can learn a lot from each other and also take a lot from each other as well.
Is there anything you started doing that you're going to stop post-COVID, or anything, you've started, you think actually that didn't work at all? When we get back to the offices, we'll definitely stop it.
There's some things that we've been forced to do, like our sales incentive, or in fact our company incentive, on a quarterly basis. We do this thing called lunch of the quarter, which is where our overperformers and our non-sales overperformers get to go on a nice lunch out to a decent restaurant. We do them regionally, so in Manchester they'll go to a restaurant close to Manchester, Leeds, etc. And of course we've just not been able to do them this year and last, and we've done quite a lot of virtual cook type basis ones. So we've still provided the reward, and we still make a big deal out of those overperformers, but we've done virtual cook-offs. I think a couple of those recently. We've done a couple of other events. We had a guest speaker, Chris Akabusi, come and guest speak at it and talk about stuff, and that was quite well received. But it's not really a substitute. It's not really what I think people would really want from a reward for their overachievement. So I don't think that one's going to last beyond the point at which we can actually get people back together and out celebrating success together.
And Richard, what do you think your work from home policy is going to be when the lockdown ends? Because you're very lucky, and you've created this fantastic culture. I'm sure most of you want to go back to pre-COVID, or is there a view now that there might be more of a hybrid solution to that?
Well, I mean, we're still working on it, Mark, to be perfectly honest with you. I think we're definitely committed to some sort of hybrid working. We've announced that internally to the organisation, that people will be allowed to work for 1 day a week from home going forward. But that's under constant review. We made that decision in the middle of COVID last year, so sort of literally middle of the year last year, when there was a lot of people who were really comfortable with working from home, but we'd started to open the offices. And people sort of saying, well, actually, why do I need to come into an office, right? It works working from home. And I think some people, it was the height of the summer, and people just really like the idea of, well, I'm here, I can just get outside and it's light until 10 o'clock at night. Winter came, and then people were like, well, actually, I don't really like it here anymore. I was definitely one of these. I really don't like it here anymore. I want to get into an office as quickly as possible. I don't want to tell that it's gone dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I want to find out when I walk out the doors at 5:30, 6 o'clock. So I think people's minds are changing on this, like, all the time, and clearly we're going to get into the summer again, and hopefully we get through a lockdown lift that enables us to get back to opening those office doors and welcoming people back. We need to see what happens. We need to see what the appetite is. Clearly, remote working works. It works well, but I think it's a risk to our culture if we were to go full work from home. That is not going to drive the culture that's made us so successful. It's a real identifier for us, and it's just what we talked about earlier. It's so important. So I think we'll end up in a hybrid world that will allow people to spend the majority of their time in the office, take benefit from their take benefit from that collaborative working space, take benefit from the energy and the people and the culture, but then also utilize some of the benefits they've seen from working at home in terms of the flexibility it affords them, their work-life balance, their ability to crack on and have a little bit of quiet space to get whatever it is that they need to get done that day done. So I think we'll end up in the space that a lot of people will, which is in a hybrid working environment. How that looks is to be determined. Really, we're not going to rush making decisions. I don't think we fell foul of rushing to make a decision, but I think we don't need to rush to make a decision just yet. We need to see what happens over the coming months, see what the position looks like. I think we still don't know what it's going to look like at the back end of 2021. Again, which is obviously when it's the worst. From a healthcare perspective, it's the worst pressure on the NHS. So I think we just need to play through and see how the vaccine rollout goes and everything else.
Yeah, because we touched on it already. Like mental health and well-being, it's really being tested at the moment, and there's I'm hearing it myself all the time. There's a record number of individuals sort of signed off in the channel that are just really, really struggling, and that's from a variety of mental health issues. What is Softcat doing around mental health, and how they had to adjust to doing, maybe mental health officers or trying to relieve that pressure? What stuff have you been doing around that subject?
We were already pretty advanced in terms of mental health first aiders, so we had a bunch of those in place way before the pandemic. We'd identified that mental health was as important as physical health in terms of our employees. So I think that had become a movement that we were involved in pretty heavily. Our charity the year before COVID was Mind. We had a big focus on making sure that people were looking after themselves and others around them. What I guess didn't become as apparent about was how close to home that was going to come, because, as you say, when people have gone into lockdown individually, people who might be the most outgoing people in the office, and you just think, what a cracking person that is, just getting out there, really, really fantastic personality, just suddenly locked in, essentially in a room, in a flat or in a house or whatever, and suddenly their outlet's gone, and it really does affect people in lots of different ways. So we've definitely we've increased our certainly the way we communicate about mental health. We've increased the number of mental health first aiders out there. We've got some benefits through our healthcare that supports some of our employees on their mental health as well. We're continuing to do work with some of the charities we do around mental health. We're exploring things like Headspace app for some of our staff as well. So just trying as much as possible, and really promoting physical well-being, because we all know physical well-being does help mental well-being as well. The two are intrinsically linked. So try and promote as much as possible that people need to look after themselves. And I think being really open and empathetic to people and everybody's situation being different. I've been really open with how I've dealt with the pandemic, and for me it's been a roller coaster, a real roller coaster. I've got two youngest children, 8 and 6, and the sort of homeschooling pressure that's brought on the household. And our hands up, I've done 95% of sitting around listening to it as opposed to doing it. My wife's done all of it, and a fantastic job of it too. But where I have tried to go and spend some time and mucked in, it's really been so difficult, and it's brought real pressure on this household. Certainly in January, when I think it kind of hit. Well, it certainly hit us as a family like a train, because we weren't expecting it. I don't know why. I was sort of trying to work out in my own brain why I didn't expect it. But I didn't expect it on the 4th of January to be hit by that. And, we were really looking forward to 2021 being the year when everything sort of picked up and took off. And suddenly it was just, really hit us really hard. So I found it particularly difficult in that time. And I've had ups and downs, and, we've gone through the 2020 as well. So I've been open and honest about that. And I think, I've said things like it's okay not to be okay, and try and get people to talk about it as much as possible, because it's okay not to be okay. your best way to do it is to then go and talk to somebody about it,
Yeah.
chat it through, even if it just gives you a sense of just togetherness in terms of, well, I'm not the only person that feels like this, or sometimes gives you a sense of perspective. I've gone and talked to people and said, I'm not feeling it today. I just not got the motivation. Perhaps it's when it was a height of winter, it's really dark outside. I'd really, you can see I've got a very nice working environment. I'm very fortunate compared to others. But it doesn't matter. I've still got to look at the screen and still got to get my head down and do this. And the minute it gets dark outside, this room feels very small and very dark. That's dark walls.
Yeah.
But I really struggled with that. And going to people and saying, I'm really struggling with this, and then hearing somebody in a worse situation than you also gives you a bit of perspective. And sometimes you've got to also think about putting yourself in other people's shoes and just being like, okay, well, actually, I'm not feeling great, but I'm a lot better off than this person and that person and these people. And therefore, I get a bit of perspective. I need to support them. And actually, if I can support them, then it'll help me as well. So I find a lot of happiness in speaking to other people.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
A real sense of joy.
My mood seems to be inclement like the weather. As soon as the weather's okay, I feel quite good. As soon as it goes dark and it's like, oh god, this is such a grind. It's too hard. It's been one of it's very, very changeable. Luckily, hopefully, we're actually coming into sort of spring and summer. It'll get better. But I'm with you. It's been a definite roller coaster for 12 months. Talking roller coasters. You have seen all of the sectors of the channel and how they're performing, from distribution, from from vendor, and obviously the end user. What trends have you seen over the last 12 months, and what do you think 2021's got in store for us?
Different parts of the channel. I mean, yeah, you're right. I see all sides of it. I'm kind of sat in the middle of it, quite fortunately. Everybody's under the same pressure. That's the main trend. It doesn't matter whether you're distribution or you're a vendor or you're a customer. You're in the same boat. I think actually I heard a phrase internally used, which I thought was really good. I'll share it with you. We're all in the same boat. We're in a different storm. And I think that's just thinking about mental health. Is everybody is in the same boat, but everybody's situation is different in terms of the storm we're in. So. I think that's the challenge that's been there for the channel. Clearly the vendors have, I think, found it quite difficult in certain parts of the market, and they've had to, obviously we've seen a number of vendors going through that sort of job cuts and redundancies and bringing their costs in line. Perhaps some of them taking advantage of the situation to close offices and make their workforces a little bit smaller than they were before. Certainly got one eye on the cost, and I think that's a challenge when you start trying to deal with vendors in that space. The marketplace just seems to get smaller, and it becomes really much more competitive. And it's really about where you build relationships and you build on that levels of trust. In terms of the reseller to vendor piece, it's really, really important. But clearly, you can't disintermediate distribution from that either. They're such a key part of that supply chain that you've really got to build your relationships there with distribution. And having, we've seen some of our distributors not come through this, which is a shame. But the majority of them have managed to ride high, whilst also, don't forget, dealing with the challenge of Brexit, which is distribution. I think is probably where they've had the biggest challenge. I take hats off to them and thank most of them for their support in terms of enabling us to still supply our customers. And then customers, the trends in customers has been unpredictable, but it's been a really unpredictable and uncertain marketplace. So you've seen some do really, spend a lot of money at one point and then suddenly close up shop and not spend so much. You've clearly got some customers in some verticals that are just having a hell of a time. Thinking like hospitality and retail, where just their businesses are just, in some respects, in some spaces, not in very good positions, and they're kind of clinging on to, rent agreements and just trying to reduce the costs and just desperate for April to come when they can open their doors again. And you think about the hospitality sector and hotels and travel and airlines, and just think, crikey, I said it, I think, at the CRN Awards. I feel so fortunate to be in our industry compared to some other vertical industries. I used to say I felt proud to be in ours, But now it's about just being fortunate.
Yeah.
You know, it's lucky that I'm in technology. You know, as we talked about my story, it could have been any area and any vertical I could have ended up working in, not really knowing what I wanted to do. But I'm in technology, and it's been really robust, and I'm feel really lucky and fortunate from that perspective. So, yeah, some customers definitely really struggling, and others in public sector, they're customers, but they're you know, got a big digital transformation to go through, and out there spending money.
I was looking through your LinkedIn profile, and sorry to put it public when I say it, but I looked at it. I thought your first job was on the help desk at Asda, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you snuck that one out. That was a temping job.
I was looking at that when you come through, and I think, oh, okay, so you could have gone down a technical route, really. So,
like, that's a funny one, because that was basically, I had the job at Softcat, and I had a holiday booked in August, and the next intake for Softcat was August intake, and the HR director at the time said, "Well, can you start in August?" I said, "Well, no, I'm going on holiday." She's like, "Well, the job might not be here if you're doing that." And I was like, "I'm going on holiday. I've just finished university. I need a break." She went, "Oh, all right, then you can start in the November intake." So I started in the November intake, but then my mum turned around and said, "We're not staying at home." So what? Well, I've got a job. It doesn't start till November. Well, tough. You've got to go out and earn some money. So, you know, living in Leeds, big employer like Asda, big head office in Leeds. So I traipsed out to Michael Page and got myself a temping job on the IT help desk. And I just, you know, had my big lever arch folder of if it was to the stores. So if the store rings and says this, then you say this. And if they say this, then you say that. And if then they say this, then you call somebody else and you pass the call over to the second and third line. It was fun. It was easy. It was good money, and it was straightforward. It didn't tax the brain too much. But it was only when I was in that training, I talked about that 2 to 3 week training, that it all the dots connected. I didn't think I even really considered that I was on the IT help desk at Asda until I was sat in the training session. I can tell you exactly which one it was. It was the Citrix training session. And they were talking about RDP and in Citrix, and I was like, RDP, I've heard that before. RDP. And then it's like my training from Asda started to kick in. I was like, I understand how all this clicks in together now. Right. And then that was it. That, you know, as soon as I suddenly became a techie overnight. So yeah, I wasn't technically minded before, but yeah, pretty passionate.
Now, Richard, my last question for you. You've been a fabulous guest, but my last question for you is this. As I said at the beginning of the show, there's every single graduate out there, not just at Softcat, in the channel, that would love to get in a position where they get a crack at an MD job, especially at Softcat. So what advice would you give these graduates or people starting out in their IT sales career, so if they can emulate what you've done? What career advice would you give them to get to the top?
You're going to steal all the advice I give to my own graduates. So it's a really good question. I'll try and think how I want to answer it. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a couple of things I think you can do, both in terms of being successful in the job you're in as it stands, so as a graduate, as a salesperson, whatever it may be. And then there's a couple of things I think you can do in terms of putting yourself out there to try and progress. But you also need to work your mind out as well, because, as I said before, if money is the most important thing to you, then staying in sales is by far the best and most lucrative career you could look for. You know, I still look at how much we pay some of our salespeople and cringe at the thought of, like, why am I not still in sales? I don't quite understand. So it's, you know, you do have to have the right mindset to want to be in management and want to go and be a bit more strategic and a bit more in terms of the direction of the organization. So the first thing is, as a salesperson, you've just got to work hard. Unfortunately, it is one of those jobs that if you don't put the time in, if you don't put the effort in, you've pretty much got no chance of succeeding. It is, you know, the reward comes from the risk and the work that you put in putting yourself out there with customers, with vendors, with opportunities. You've got to be astute and you've got to work hard to find those angles and those opportunities. You've got to be fortunate, you do, but you've got to make that luck. I'm a strong believer that there's a huge amount of luck in people's success in sales. You know, right place, right time, but you've got to put yourself in the right place at the right time. You've 100% got to make those calls Do the work, the investigation prior to the call, so that you put yourself in the best position to answer customers' queries when they put you on the spot, which of course they're going to do. Like we do as consumers, we always put people on the spot. So you've got to expect that as a salesperson. So you do have to put it in. And I always say to all of our graduates, so at the end of the day, end of every day, do me a favor. At the end of every day, look at yourself in the mirror when you're brushing your teeth, which is what most people do when they're brushing their teeth. They'll look at themselves in the mirror. Just look at yourself and say, did I do the best that I could today? Did I work as hard as I could today? And if 4 times out of 5 in the working week, the answer is yes, then you're doing the right thing. You know, whether you're seeing the success or you're not seeing the success, if on average 4 out of 5 times the answer is yes, because you're always going to have an off day. People have off days all the time. You talked about it when you wake up and it's dark and you're just not feeling at it. I've talked about not being at it on certain days. That happens. And some days you just have a bad day, or you have on the sales calls, you have bad sales calls. But if you can do 4 out of 5 days looking yourself in the mirror on a consistent basis, then you'll succeed, because if you put the hard work in, you'll get there. It might take time trying to compare yourself to other people, because it might take longer, but you'll get there. You'll get where you need to be, and you'll learn along the way what you need to be as successful, if not more successful, than the person you were considering comparing yourself to right at the beginning. So definitely that. And then in terms of progressing your career, because I think, and we see this challenge a lot, especially with the Generation Zs and the Millennials coming through, in terms of the desire for progress as quickly and as on demand as life is these days for most people. I think there's one thing: be patient, because it's very congested as you get to the top. It becomes more difficult to get that progress as you want it, and as quickly as you want it. There's opportunity everywhere. I do admit that, and I do understand that there's opportunity everywhere. But be patient and be really clear as to what it is you want. And if you're clear as to what you want, then you'll be patient for what it is you want, if you understand what I'm trying to say. The right opportunity is right in front of you in most cases, if you can be patient enough for it. But also put yourself out there. Tell people how you feel. Tell people what you want in a nice way, not in a demanding way. Not, I want this job and I want it by this time, because that generally doesn't get met so well. But I'm looking for my next challenge. I'm looking for more challenge. These are the things I enjoy. These are things I don't enjoy. What development opportunities are there for me? How can I put myself in the best position? Those sorts of questions are great questions to go to line managers and ask, in terms of pushing yourself and pushing yourself forward. And I think personally, it's quite good to continue to challenge yourself. I try and do it every 4 years or so, 3 or 4 years. Take something, push myself out of my comfort zone, do something that I haven't done before on a regular basis, just to try and develop myself. And I think I've got a lot of development to go, but I developed a lot over the last 18 years by taking on additional challenges. So go and ask the question in a nice way, and ask what you can do, and also push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I think, again, if you can do that, like I said, there's lots of opportunities. There's lots of companies like Softcat with opportunities within them. And there's lots of companies who are smaller than Softcat that have the ability to grow and have lots of opportunities in them as well. So I think the future's bright for most people.
Richard, you've been a great guest.